Okay, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I am excited to see you all here. If you do not know me, I am Reni. I am a full-time content creator based in Toronto, Canada, and I make content about financial literacy and career development. And as you can tell by the title right here, today we're going to be talking about raising financially literate children. I get this DM literally all the time, and people are like, oh, so like your parents raised you so well. How can I raise my children to be the same? And I'm like, I didn't raise myself. Like I can tell you a few things, and I do have a video with my dad about that. But I can't. I'm not an expert in that, especially because I'm not a parent yet. So while I will be having my parents on a future episode, today I decided to bring an expert, Jasmine Paul, and she is a children's book author and a certified financial education instructor. And she has a lot of books about making, and it basically makes financial literacy easy and allows you to talk to your kids about money. So that's why I decided to bring her on today. Before I bring her on, I want this to be an interactive session. So I see a few of you have joined. I want you to comment in the chat and introduce yourself, okay? Because I want this to be an interactive session. So let's warm up the stage for Jasmine to come up. So let me please comment in the chat and let me know where you're joining from. Introduce yourself. Tell me why you're here. Don't be shy. And I will wait. You guys know me. I will wait. So please, I see a few of you are on already. So why aren't you introducing yourself? Leave those comments in the chat. So 12 people are here, but none of you are introducing yourselves? That's a little wild. Come on, if you guys want me to continue to do lives, and if you want me to bring my parents on for the next video, please make sure that you're interacting with this. It allows me to know that you actually want to be here. Okay, hello everybody. Hi, Paida or Paida. Fort McMurray, oh, Florida. I think, oh wait, Fort McMurray. No, that's in Alberta, I believe. I'm not sure. Tony's here. Hi, everyone. Okay, thank you for joining. Do any of you have kids? Is that why you're here? I know a lot of people said they're not even parents and they are joining, so that was really exciting to me. Okay, so I'm gonna bring Jasmine up on stage. Hi, Rahel. Hi,
Hello.
Jasmine.
Hi, Reni. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing so well. I am so excited to talk with you and your followers, your listeners, subscribers. I'm excited. Let's talk about money.
Yes, I'm excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining. I see that we have a lot of people here. Cousin, mom of two. This is great. Tomber does not have kids yet, but she wants her future kids to join. So I think we have a good mixture of people. So thank you so much for joining us. And Paida corrected me. It's Alberta. I thought I was confusing a few things, but she's based in Alberta, so that's great. Okay, so Jasmine, I'd just like you to maybe introduce yourself. And my friend Janie taught me this. She asked people, tell me who you are, what you do, and why you do it. So I'd like to ask you that.
Absolutely. So again, thank you so much, Reni, for having me on your live. I'm so excited to be here. We are like international, Canada, Nigeria, the US. I mean, this is amazing. So hello, everyone. My name is Jasmine Paul. I am a certified financial education instructor, as well as the author of the Wealth Playground series, which is a children's book series to empower children and their families to be more financially literate and to make wealth fun. I've been working in the space of financial literacy for about 7 years now, and I absolutely love it because I found myself my last year of college in a bit of a bind. I ended up breaking my lease for my apartment, and because I couldn't afford it, and I didn't ask anyone for help. I could have went to my parents, didn't ask them for help, so I ended up sleeping on friends' couches as well as sleeping in my car some nights. And I remember when I graduated, I said, I will not be in this situation if I can help it. And so I dove into financial literacy, reading as many books as I could. And from there, was able, like you, Reni, to purchase my first property at 23 and just taught financial literacy to my friends, and that's kind of where the business came around. Create Finstew, to really teach families, adults, how they can, number one, get their finances right, but also empower their youth coming up behind them.
Wow. And where are you based? Because I see people are asking where you are based, Jasmine.
Yes, I'm in Central Texas.
Okay, so she's in the States. Yes. So again, some of the things may not apply, like certain accounts, but hopefully I can fill those gaps if they do not apply. So thank you so much for being here and accepting my invitation. I really do appreciate it. So we had a lot of questions. I don't know if we can get through all of them in this 1 hour, but everyone, I want this to be interactive as well, as I said. So leave your questions in the chat if you have some, and we'll make sure to answer them in general, okay? So let's talk about raising financially literate children. So the first question that I wanted to ask you was, what was your relationship like with money growing up, personally, for you?
So I'm first generation American. My parents are from the West Indies, the Caribbean. And so growing up, like, money was not, like, you don't talk about money in the house. It's very taboo to talk about money. And so I do recall, though, my grandmother taking me to open up my bank account at the credit union. And so she, like, walked me to the bank and showed me, like, this is a checkbook and this is how you balance it. And so I do recall, like, those memories with my grandmother, not necessarily talking about money, but just showing me, okay, these are the tools that you need to place your money once you earn it. Mm-hmm. My parents, I grew up overseas. So I grew up in Japan at the middle of my childhood, excuse me. And I recall always identifying, different coins. So I grew up in Asia. And so, of course, Japanese yen, which is way different than the US dollar, I would be able to identify, okay, this is what a dollar is equal to. So doing the international exchange rate. And so that was really helpful in understanding value and understanding how things cost a little more, or maybe they cost a little less, depending on where you live. So that was my experience with money as, I guess, a young, between the ages of like 6 and 10. When I became a teenager, preteen, my dad did something really cool. He set me up with a Visa Bucks card. So they discontinued this card in the States, but the Visa Bucks card basically was a debit card that your parents can load money onto it, and then you would, swipe and do your thing. And so that, for me, that helped me, because once that account got to zero, I could not swipe anymore. Yeah. Like, I couldn't swipe anymore. And so I'm really grateful that I think I got that when I was 12. And so he was just, he would put my allowance on it and I would buy the things that I wanted to do. And so I would say we never really had a sit down. The way we have conversations now, we did not have kind of a sit down of like, here's what you do with money, here's where money goes. But I think through their experiences and their examples, that's kind of how I learned about money.
Mm-hmm. And I would say my experience was a bit different. My parents were very intentional about teaching us about money. So since I was maybe 4 years old, when I moved to Canada at age 4, I got a bank account. And then so I would have to put, like, if an auntie or uncle would come over, I would have to put half of that money into my bank account. And honestly, as a child, I was like I don't want to do this. Like, what is this act? Like, why do I have to give my money to someone? And my dad also explained to me that, the bank also lends your money out to other people. And I swear I cried that first time that he told me that. So I was like, why would my money be going to someone else? But I think it really did help me long term, obviously. So What I want to ask you was, this was a question from somebody, but what is the right age to start talking to your children about money? And how do you even start talking to them about money?
Absolutely. So psychologists have shared that 3 years old is a 3-year-old can understand the basic concepts of money. So basic, a coin, a dollar, or, Canadian dollar, like, they can understand the basics of like what that is. They might not understand, okay, I can spend this and then get goods and services from it, but they can understand as far as like coin identification. There's a CEO, Ken Eiler. He is the CEO of Aquilence, which is a financial services firm for highly affluent families here in the US. He recommends that those families start teaching their kids between the ages of 4 and 5. Like they should start with basic concepts of money. And then by the age of 12 and 13, they should understand taxes. They should understand investing. They should understand how, 12 and 13, how society works. And of course, this is over time, right? This is not like you're getting like an investing 101 course and now they're going to go off and be great. But I believe, every type of conversation, every, dinner table chat should have something that deals with your value system within your family.
Okay. That is a lot because I feel like I don't even know about tax. Like now I know a little bit more about taxes, but even at my big age, it's like, it still goes over my head sometimes. So that's really interesting to know. And I guess because they are the ultra affluent people, right? It makes sense. They're preparing their children for greater success. So I hope that all of us can do the same. But that begs the question, how do we teach our kids about money if we are not even financially literate ourselves?
Absolutely. I get that question all the time. I think as adults, and mind you, I do not have children. One day I will, but as adults, we think that children cannot learn or they just won't understand it. And so I'm finding in some of my classes and sessions that sometimes the kids are, teaching the adults. And so reading books is probably, I feel like, at the ground level where you can start. So reading kids' books about money. There's a kids' book called Investing. The kids' book about investing, I believe. I'm probably butchering the title, but I'll send you the link for it. But it is honestly the basic ground level of investing. And I give that book to adults because I think if you can, as an adult, understand it, as a kid, you can understand it, then an adult can understand as well. So if you are feeling like, hey, I'm struggling with money, I would absolutely encourage you to grab a children's book. There are several. If you go to like Amazon.com and search kids money books, there are several in the top 50, but that will be like your basic ground level foundation. Also, another thing that you can do is share an example. So my parents, towards, I would say, my adulthood, they really shared, different examples with me about like how they mismanaged their money, and it helped me to not do that. So I know for me, like credit cards was like a big thing. Like my parents were like, absolutely not. Like, you will not be getting a credit card until you're ready. And so I think I got my first credit card at 18. Yeah, when I first turned 18. But they kind of like instilled in my head, like, you're not going to run this up. It's only for not even emergencies. It's literally like you need to have that money in your bank account before you charge this card. Like, you're not just about to charge this card and run up your credit. And so, at 18, I had like a $500 limit, but I never had like an issue of like running up the credit card because they told me about, going to a store, department store, getting a credit card because they said it's going to be 10% off their purchase, and then, having a balance left over. So, and then also like watch shows. Like, I watched Moesha growing up. I don't know if Moesha went to Canada. Okay, because I also watched Degrassi. I love Degrassi too. But but Moesha had a scene where she had a credit card, and like her dad, Frank Mitchell, was like, you will not use this credit card. And she used a credit card to bail out her boyfriend Q. And I was like, I just saw how furious her dad got. And I was like, I can't. Like, the way my life is set up, like I could not do that. Like, my dad would kill me. So yes, absolutely.
So say, what if say I'm someone who I have never used a credit card even before in my life. How would I even go about teaching my kid that, Like, I get that, okay, I can maybe show them examples on TV, but say like I am completely, like, I don't know about investing. I don't know about credit cards. say
Yeah.
I only use cash and like,
Right.
I only use cash. I live paycheck to paycheck. I don't invest any of my money. How is there a way that somebody who's in that situation can still raise financially literate kids?
Absolutely. So there are several resources that I researched in Canada that are a bit helpful. So ABC Money Matters with TD Bank. It's through the ABC Life Literacy Canada. And so they teach both parent classes as well as kid classes for financial literacy, and they're free. So it's an introductory financial literacy class, but I think that's taking some type of financial literacy course or going online through YouTube is honestly, like, to me, the best step. Finding something. It doesn't have to be something that you pay for. I wouldn't recommend, going to something that you have to pay for. Look for the free options. But there is a wealth of knowledge on the internet. I wish I had that, that knowledge when I was, growing up. I'm a little older, but I wish I had that knowledge, because I feel like now you have it at your fingertips. So if you don't understand, let's say I don't know anything about investing, then you would go to Investopedia.com, I believe. So Investopedia is like the encyclopedia of investments. There it gives you resources of how do I start, an investment account? How do I start an IRA? I believe you all have the RESPs, as well as the RRSP, and then the TFSA, right?
Yeah.
So how do I do that? There's also another app when it comes to credit specifically. It's called Kitty Credit. And so Kitty Credit is a really cool app that teaches kids how they can build their credit scores within the app. And so that's something that if an adult is not, they don't understand credit, they can also download that app as well.
Great. Thank you for the resources. And I appreciate you for looking at Canadian resources, because you didn't have to do that, but thank you so much. So
absolutely.
Let's go back to the very, very basics. So you said, okay, when a child is about 3 years old, they can start learning about money. You can introduce coins to them and explain things like that. But
absolutely.
What is a good starting point to start teaching our kids about money? So once they understand the coins, where do we go from there?
Yes. So between the ages of 3 to 5, you can do your coin identification. There's a blog that I found that does like slime. So if you're a parent that's interested in slime, some parents don't like it because it's very messy, but you can put different coins in the slime, and as the child reveals, as they're playing with the slime and they reveal the coin, that could be, oh, that's for us in the US, a nickel, or that's a dime, or that's a penny. And that's something to really reinforce the coin identification. Then you want to move into wants versus needs. And this is something that you can do around your house. I like to do a value exercise. So you can go throughout the house with your child and be like, okay, so what are some things that is important to you, but also important to me? And a child could say, well, water is important, right? So you turn on the faucet. Running water is super important. Clean running water is very important. You can say, oh, wow, my computer, if I'm working from home, that's really important. But what powers the computer? Electricity. That's super important as well. Then you go, maybe you have a car in your garage or outside of your residence. And that's really important because that takes us from the grocery store. It takes you to school. It takes me to my job. And so those very basic things, right? Your living shelter, your clothes on your back, those are things that are important. Those are things that you value. And so that's something that you can share wants versus needs. So we need a roof over our head, right? We need water. We need electricity to be able to function. And then what are some things that we might want, right? A lot of kids love Roblox. I'm going to butcher the name, but they love Fortnite. They're interested in going to Disney World or going to some type of amusement park. That's more of a want. And so that's when you can kind of differentiate, okay, what's a need that is going to help us every single day versus something that we can maybe save up for and a goal for our family for the things that we want.
Ooh, that's a great step. And I think it's important to differentiate them. How do you explain to them that, like, we spend money on our needs, and you can buy wants, but like we can't just spend all our money on our wants. Is there a way to reinforce that we can explain? I actually had a question from Ellie, and this is her question. She said,
Yeah.
my 6-year-old simply doesn't understand the concept of money. We try to explain that mommy and daddy work so that we can afford XYZ, but it doesn't seem to stick. I think the idea of her using her own money to purchase things she wants is a start, but she would like any other ideas that you have.
Absolutely. So I think here, this is when you would kind of reverse the role. So right now, I think it's great. I'm so excited that you all are empowering your child and giving her the tools, but also she's 6. And so it's going to take some time in developing just the understanding. But I would say I would reverse the questions and have her ask questions, right? So there are certain things a 6-year-old wants. I know when I was 6, I wanted to do a lot of things. I wanted every doll on the shelf. I wanted just everything I could see on TV. And so that's when you kind of reverse it and say, okay, so tell me a little bit more about what you want. And she's like, oh, I want this new doll, or I want this new, game. Okay. Do you know how much it costs? And maybe she's like, wait, does it cost something? I thought it was free. And it's like, well, then you go to the grocery store and you're like, well, we don't just pick up items, right? We have to pay for them. And so then you start developing a conversation of like, okay, identifying costs that are associated to those items. But I would say put the ball back in her court so she can start asking questions to you, but also start kind of declaring what she wants, because kids want things like from the time they're a baby, they need the nourishment, they need milk, they need formula, they need things, right? And so as they grow up, they want things. And so definitely ask, what are some things that you want? Christmas just passed. What are some things that were on the list? And then start associating a price or a cost to those things that she wants.
What do you think about allowances? I know some people think that allowances like spoil children, and some people think that they're a good way to teach children. Just like you just said, like, oh, your candy that costs $2, yeah, you have to do this chore before you can buy that candy. And okay, so now you see that, okay, what the work that I'm doing actually it has a direct relation to what I can buy. So what are your thoughts on allowances? Should we do them? Should we not? What is the right age? Any thoughts on that?
Right. So I think it's definitely dependent on the family as well as dependent on the budget. So if it's in the budget, I do think that allowances are a way to show how you earn money. And so a child is understanding that if, let's say, one of the chores, for example, is to clean their bedroom and to keep it neat, that's something that they earn. They have to work for it. And so that's an opportunity for them to see, if I don't clean my room, I'm not going to get paid. And so that is going to hinder my want of this new doll or this candy, right? So I think it just depends on the budget, but also it depends on the family dynamic. I had a little boy, he was about 10 years old. He read my book, A Boy, a Budget, and a Dream, and he sat down and negotiated with his parents. Like, I think it's time for me to get an allowance. And I was like, okay, I'm not trying to have any beef, I'm not trying to have families have beef, but I do think it's raising kids to be a little bit more aware that, okay, mommy and daddy told me no, because maybe it's not in the budget, but how can I earn this? How can I be creative in raising the money that I need for the things that I want?
Okay, I will say that my parents did give me an allowance, and I do think it taught me about money, but it was basically like, okay, if you want anything, like, you're gonna have to use your own money. Like, these wants are only for, like, save up enough money to buy whatever you want. And I think it did teach me a lot. I'm not a big spender, and maybe it's because, like, since a very young age, I've been like, okay, if I don't do my work, I'm not gonna get money, and it takes a long time to do that work. So, like, do I just want to spend it on everything? No, I do not. Right. So yeah, it definitely. Let me know in the chat. Are you team allowance or are you team no allowance? Because I know there's very mixed opinions on that. But I agree with you. If it's in the budget,
Right. And I was the same way. So I grew up with an allowance, and I'm not a huge spender either. I'm pretty frugal. And I think it's because like I've been working since I was pretty young. My first job was a kids DJ. So I would DJ at kids parties. But I've been working for a long time. And so I know how hard it is to, earn money. And so, at least from the beginning, I just have not been a big spender, but I will say it helped me, not necessarily with budgeting, but it helped me like, okay, I can't maybe spend $100 because it'll take me like 6 days or 2 weeks to make that up
Yeah,
when
exactly.
I was younger.
Yeah, and then I guess you learn the concept of delayed gratification as well. It's like, okay, I'm gonna have
Absolutely.
to, I have to work for this. Even though I want it right now, I'm gonna have to work a bit more in order to afford it. And then maybe 2 weeks later, you don't even want it anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So my next question would be, at what age do we open a checking or saving account for our child? So as I said, mine was at age 4. I don't know if that's too early, too late. Do you have any suggestions on that?
I think at the beginning of a child's life, that's when you should just start opening a check, not a check account, but I believe you guys call it so for us, it's either a 529 or you can do a UTMA or a UGMA.
Yeah, I think ours is the RESP.
Okay. Yes, that's for college education, right? Up to
Yeah.
50,000
Yeah.
per child. Yes.
Yeah.
So I would say at the beginning of a child's life, like that's when you should be starting some type of an account that will grow over the child's life. So grow over the 18 years or 22 years or however long the rules are stipulated based on what account you create. But I think that's something that's necessary and that sets a child up for success. Whether they go to college or whether they don't, that's something that you put away consistently over the course of a child's life. So that's number one. When it comes to, so that's like an investment account that's going to grow. When it comes to a checking account, again, I think it depends on the family, depends on the budget. It depends on, what is the overall goal. So if the goal is, hey, I want to teach my child new ideas, I want to teach them how to build wealth, I think as early as possible, as early as you can. And then you just want to be consistent with that account. So if you are, let's say, just putting maybe $5 each month, just being consistent and showing them, oh, look at the account. It's been growing, and this is why it's growing because, we put in your gift money that you received for your birthday, or we put in Christmas money. But just being consistent and showing them. I think oftentimes parents don't allow kids in the conversation, and some conversations, right, they don't need to be involved in. But there are some conversations like the family meeting of a budget. And if you're not having a family meeting, which is, doing your budget once a month, I'd highly recommend it, because that way the kids can see, okay, we're not doing these certain things because we're saving up for this big trip that we need to go on for a holiday. Or maybe we really want to buy a new family car, and this is why we're doing these things. Or we're purchasing our family a home, like we're moving and we're growing, and so we want to purchase a home. And so I think it's important to include the kids in the conversation so they can ask questions, but also they can see how it really takes some preparation before I make these major life decisions.
Okay, so all of the things you said brought up a few questions for me. So I'm just going to hopefully remember them. But the first one that I had was from Tombra. So she was saying, is it possible to set up an account for your child if they're not born yet? So in Canada, if you were trying to set up an RESP, which is your Registered Education Savings Plan, unfortunately, they need to be born in order to do that. So but the day they're born or whenever you get their social insurance number, you can open an account for them and then start investing for them in that. And again, if you put $2,500, that's how you maximize it each year. And then they will put up to $500 extra on top of that, the government. So I highly recommend doing that. That's how my parents were able to pay for my education, allow me to go to university debt free. And then I think there's another question that I had related to that. So you mentioned, okay, starting a checking and savings account like from as early as possible. But what about one that they have access to? Is there a certain time to give them access and like to explain to them like this is what we are doing with your money when you put it? Is there a certain age that you would recommend to start at that?
I would say probably between the ages of like 5 to 6, 5 to 7.
Okay.
So 5 is kind of probably the age where they'll start to understand it. You can go as early as 4, just depending on the child, right? Depending on do they understand it or not. But I think it's never too early to open it,
Yeah,
and then maybe start introducing the conversation once they grasp the concept of coin identification, bill identification. They understand wants versus needs, and then I feel like before you start giving them an allowance, I definitely think having that account open is necessary.
definitely. And another question, another thing that sparked my interest when you were talking was you said that we should have a monthly budget meeting with our family and then bring the kids into it. So I have thoughts on this. Do you think that exposing kids to like, say you're going through like financial hardship, do you think it can sometimes have the adverse effects on kids when you're like,
Mm,
when they feel like maybe they're a burden because of, you know what I
mm,
mean? So I'm just wondering
right,
if you know a good way to balance that. Like,
right. So yes. So again, it's dependent on the family and the family dynamic. I recognize there's some families that don't have are just not comfortable with communicating that part and being vulnerable, and that's okay, right? That it is absolutely okay. You're not going to, derail your child in any way. It's to me, I think it's important to be transparent in how you share what you desire to share. I think it's important that you also kind of shield them as well, because they are kids and they still have a life to live, right? They still need to be kids, and so I think that's important. I know when I was in college, there was a situation that happened in my family, and I was told the information. Again, I was a college student, not a kid living at home, and that honestly, for me, it motivated me to do more. Maybe I didn't need to, but it did kind of motivated me to like do more and help more. But again, I think it's dependent on the child, it's dependent on the family. I don't think if there are serious matters that are going on, probably not the best time to introduce what you're going through. But I do think as that situation progresses or moves forward and it's more in a positive light, I do think that is an opportunity, a learning opportunity to share kind of the mistakes or
mhm,
how you entered that path and maybe guide them so they don't enter the same path.
good points. Yeah, especially I think sharing, even if you don't tell them during, as you said, telling them afterwards, and you can say, okay, so we made this mistake, and this mistake. We want you to learn from it, and this is how you do it, so that you never have to experience that. So yeah,
Right.
great, great advice. Thanks.
And I will add, I'm sorry. I will add, like, financial literacy, financial empowerment is a lifelong journey. Like, it's not a one and done. It's a one conversation. You're going to watch this YouTube and it's about to change. It will impact your life. And I do think you take some steps towards, creating these different accounts and being consistent, it will absolutely make an impact. But just note, like with my family, my parents, my uncles, I'm constantly having conversations about money, just getting their perspective, because generational impacts or generational perspectives are very different. Like my mom's generation on money, like they just have a very different perspective than I do as a millennial. And then my sister as a Gen Z, like she just is totally different. And I think you have to just constantly have conversations and be open-minded to, I'm very open-minded to what my grandmother thinks versus, and then also what my sister thinks, because I believe both combined could definitely help me in my financial journey. So I would say don't limit yourself in that, oh man, I don't understand it right now. Like if you are putting your best foot forward, you are providing a safe environment for your child, you're rocking it. Like that is great. And you're on this live receiving, information, you're tuning into Reni. Like that is those are the best steps you could take to empower you financially and your family.
I was just going to say, everyone who's here, I'm sure they're already taking the right steps to get exactly where they need to be. So that's great.
Absolutely.
So Zindizi asked a question. She said, when it comes to financial literacy, or actually her daughter asked a question, my mistake.
Oh, nice. I love it.
Her daughter says, when it comes to financial literacy, what would you say is the most difficult thing to teach or to do? This is a hard one.
That is a hard one. I think, oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I think because financial literacy is so personal, personal finance is so personal that it's hard to say, okay, this one is the most difficult, because for some people it may be easy, right? And then for other people it can be difficult. But have you noticed anything that's particularly difficult to explain?
I probably think investing is probably a bit challenging for people, for kids for sure, but also for adults too. Yeah. I think saving is easier because it's so it's right in your face, and so you can see, if I put in $5 today, put in $5 tomorrow, it grows to $10. But when it comes to investing and understanding compound interest and understanding how over time, like, this money will grow at this yield, like, that is hard to explain, because people, I think some people want right here and right now, and not understanding, like, this takes time, just like those companies that you're investing in, those take time to grow and scale. Your money will also take time to grow and scale, but starting as early as possible is important, but also starting where you're at right now. Like, if you aren't young, that's okay too. But I think that's probably the hardest concept, because it's not so, 5 + 5 = 10. It's showing that growth over time. I think that's probably the most difficult and most challenging.
Yeah, and I think it can also be difficult for people because the markets are going to go up and they're going to go down, right? So people are like, oh, I don't like, it's good to see your money going up, but right now, especially, right? The market is not doing the best. So people
not
are
doing
like,
the best.
yeah, I know some people message me saying that they have withdrawn the money from their accounts and I'm at a loss, right? And of course, that's not what you want to do. You want to hold long term, ideally. But yeah, I think that's probably one of the hardest parts. Another question that we got from Ellie was, how do we teach our kids about investing? So I know you said it's one of the hardest parts, but is there a practical way to teach them about investing, and how young can they be for us to start investing on their behalf?
Absolutely. So there are tons of ways, in my opinion, you can share about investing. There are really cool, practical ways I'll share the website. Let me think about it and I'll share it with you. But there are so many, like, practical exercises to share kind of like what growth is. And so I don't always like to look at, cash. I like to look at kind of like, what can we utilize around the house? So you can start with something as simple as like gardening, right? So I know a ton of people created like gardens in their backyards, or in their, on their porches, or on their balconies, or in their house. So you can start with seeds and then watching them grow over time. So taking a few seeds that you can get from a grocery store, or anywhere that you can get seeds from, and then planting those seeds with your child. And so those seeds, there are certain things that are required to grow them, right? So they need some type of solid soil, some good soil, so not anything that's kind of old. They need some new soil. They need some water, depending on the seed. They might need some sunlight, or maybe indirect sunlight. And then over time, you watch them grow, right? And so they can sprout into a new flower. They can sprout into, if it's parsley or basil. From that activity, you are showing them that, hey, investing takes time. It takes time to watch your things grow, right? And there was also different things that you had to apply to the growth. So you can't overwater it. You have to make sure you're monitoring how much you're watering, how much sunlight it's getting. And then you're also, once it rises and sprouts, you're able to pick from it. And so that was that reminded me, Reni, of what you did was you changed your investment strategy when it came to, I believe, with Wealthsimple, right? So
Mhm.
you change your investment strategy. And so sometimes when we plant seeds, they don't always grow the way that we want them. And so we have to change, the strategy of gardening. And so that's the same concept. Again, this is very complex, but this is a simplified way that a child could be able to understand that, hey, if I plant these seeds, it's going to take a long time. So if I open up an investment account and I plant them, I'm just, again, not giving any investment advice, but just saying, if I plant them in the S&P 500, then as I, make my contributions every month or every quarter, whatever it is, I can also see these plants or this investment account grow. But I also recognize that the market, the soil, is going to maybe not be the best environment for me to plant. And so the soil might not be as fertile as it needs to be. It might not be as good as it needs to be. And so sometimes I need to, like you, transplant those seeds to another soil to increase. And I hope that wasn't confusing. But
No, that was that's actually an amazing analogy. Like I've never heard anyone explain it like that. So
oh,
that was
good.
really
I was
good.
like, am I being confusing? But I think sometimes we need to take a step back. Financial literacy can be very confusing and very overwhelming when it comes to the different terms that are being used. So I think taking a step back and applying it to everyday life. So maybe it's not gardening, maybe it's something else, like creating something from, I'm thinking of my sister and my mom starting with crocheting. They, over the winter break, they started crocheting, and I mean, they have done such an amazing job with their
Mhm.
crochet, just the different things that they've been able to make, from hats and scarves. But they had to gather these materials, right? They had to gather the yarn, the crochet. Number one, they had to learn, which is, for us, we need to learn about investing. And then they started creating. And so their first couple of times, it was not easy. Like, it wasn't easy, and they didn't look as good as they do now. But I think taking a step back to seeing, how do we show what growth looks like to our family, and how do we make it relevant? I think that's really, really important.
I love it. Snap, snap. That was a great
Oh, good.
analogy, Jasmine. Thank you. Yeah, I've never heard it explained like that, so I think that's great. As for more practical analogies or more practical ways as well, I think showing your kids your own portfolio as well can be helpful. I know you
Absolutely.
mentioned this, Jasmine, but basically you want to model good behavior because kids are
Hmm.
like a sponge and they they copy
Hmm.
everything that you do. So if you show them like, look, I put in $200 a month into this account and I invest in this ETF, index fund, stock, or whatever,
Right.
and then look, over these past 5 years, it's grown by this much. They'll be like, oh, once I'm making money, I want to do the same thing, right? So
Right.
I think that was
Absolutely.
great. And the second half of that question was, how young can they be for us to start investing on their behalf slash with them? So
Mhm.
in Canada, you have to be 18 for them to start investing by themselves. However, you can hold stocks in trust for them before they do turn 18. So
Yeah.
if you are a parent, you can. My parents used to like buy stocks for me and gift them to me on my birthday, and then once I turn 18, then they can transfer them into my name. So it's a good way to like build wealth for them, even though they're legally not able to. Or of course through the RESP. A lot of people use the RESP as a savings account, but it's actually, you can actually invest in stocks through your RESP for your child. So basically, you open a self-directed RESP, and then you can invest through that account. Anything to add to that, Jasmine? Maybe I missed something.
Yeah, that's similar to the US. It depends on the type of account. So whether it's a UGMA, UTMA, or a 529. But again, there are stipulations when it comes to the age. But I would say start investing on their behalf. You can start as soon as the child is born and they have, in the US, a social security number.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So Trish had a question. At what age do you introduce kids to the concept of compound interest?
That's a good question. I think it depends on the child and how well they're able to understand math, but also understanding numbers and the concept of growth. So typically, around the ages of 7 to 10, going into 11 and 13 as well. It just depends on 11 to 13. You really want to drive home, setting goals. You want to drive home, how work equals pay. And so I would say as early as 6, but again, it just depends on the child and their development.
Mhm. Okay. Another question that we had, this one is a little bit more complex, I think, but Ellie asked, how can you help your child build credit? And I know credit is a huge thing. And once we turn 18, when we go to university, the banks are like they're literally on campus and they're like, here's a free iPad if you open a credit card.
You guys get a free iPad. So in the States,
Yes.
they're cheap here in the States. They'll give you a free T-shirt. It's a free
Oh
T-shirt with
no.
their logo on it.
Oh no! When I was at York, I went to York University, and the things they were giving out. I guess it was a raffle. Like not everyone would get it, but still, like
Okay.
people were winning free iPads for opening credit cards. And the thing is, obviously,
Wow.
they're not teaching you how to use a credit card, right?
Right.
So a lot of my friends got into serious debt. I would say, especially in our first year, because they were just like, "Oh, free money! I got an iPad and I got free
Right.
$3,000. This is amazing." So, yeah. So maybe you could explain how you can help them build credit from the time that they're young, and also how to maybe teach them about the concept of credit. I know you mentioned Kitty Credit, but
Yes. So Kitty Credit definitely is a great app that allows your kids to build credit within the app platform. Another way is, so in the US, and it's definitely dependent on the family. And I say that because, again, personal finances are personal. So not everything that I share is going to maybe work for you or work for what your plan is for your family. I think it's important when it comes to credit that if you're building someone else's credit, you definitely want to make sure that your credit is solid and you are disciplined. And so you don't want to like try to build something and then it's not as solid as it could be. So first, making sure that your credit is solid and or at least have a plan to move forward in building your credit score. There are ways where you can, I believe it's like an authorized user that you can create an account for your child. I think it's, again, dependent on the family. And I've seen some things that aren't always the best, where, parents have opened accounts in, children's names. I don't think that's it. I don't think that's good. So, at all. But yes, I would say for me, for what I teach, because I try to teach, families and kids and adults not to get into debt. For me, it's just understanding terms and conditions, understanding what that means. What does it mean when it comes to your APR? What does it mean from, the variable APR? How is this going to impact you in the future? How is not paying the credit card off and then gaining, having interest accrue? Like, what does that mean for your future? And really explaining that. Because I think sometimes we want to build it, but I just want to make sure that we understand, like, what is the goal? Are we wanting to purchase a car? Are we wanting to purchase a home? Like, what are the goals for building the credit?
Definitely. And I like what you said about you have to make sure that you're a responsible person before you ever decide to open a credit or put your child on your credit, because it can ruin their credit as well. So while you can help build them, some people, their parents have put them on their credit. They have an 800 credit score by the time they're 18, which is amazing. But other people, kids will turn 18, they'll look at their credit for the first time and they'll have a 400, 300, like they'll have basically no score at all. So it's important to make sure that you are financially literate and understand credit before you ever do that. My parents never put me on their credit, so I don't think it's a must. I have almost a perfect credit score now, and it's because they taught me how to use credit once I turned 18. And they taught me before I turned 18. I think that's the key. Like before I ever got exposure to get a credit card, they taught me about it. yeah. So
Absolutely.
I guess to answer Ellie's question, yes, you can. There are ways to build your child's credit beforehand. Do we recommend it? It's definitely a personal decision, but
Right.
educating them is probably one of the better things that you can do for them.
Absolutely.
Okay, another question that we had was, how can we teach our kids the importance and responsibility of money while making it fun and engaging? And I also wanted to say, anyone, if you have questions, please leave them in the chat so that we can answer them. I'm just reading off the ones that we got on Instagram, but if you have questions, feel free to ask them. So, Jasmine, again, the question, yeah.
No, I wanted to know what the question was.
Okay, yeah. Sorry. How can we teach our kids the importance and responsibility of money while making it fun and engaging? Maybe your book would be a great way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. You can always always read books. I love books. For me, one of my memorable experiences growing up was always my mom and my dad took me to the library. And so I would take out the max limit every time we went to the library. So I would turn in my borrowed books and then take new books home. And so for me, that taught me one responsibility, because if I did not turn them in on time, I got fined, and then I would have to pay out of my money these library fees. But also, I think it's important to understand the why. Like, why are we here? I know for a fact that we were not put on this earth to just work and die. Like, I know that for a fact. Like, we were not just put on this earth just to go to work and to leave this earth, right? There's some type of purpose behind why you're here. And so I think it's important to find that why, and then figuring out, okay, from that why, what resources do I need to get to that why? So I know for me growing up, it was going to college, going to school. So there were resources that I needed, scholarships, grants that I was able to receive. I did take out student loans. But I always try to look at the why and then try to answer the why, the how, and then the what. And so for you, how do you teach your kids the importance and responsibility? I think it's figuring out what the purpose is. Like, why are you using money? Is it to create a new life? I know, Reni, you talk about the multiple streams of income. Like, you want to retire in a certain lifestyle, right? Like, that's important to you. And so how do you make it fun and engaging? It's like by showing up every single day and living your best life out loud, even through the hard times. Like, I'm telling y'all, I lived in my car and then lived on friends' couches. One, because I did not ask for help. Do not do it. I do not recommend it. But I still knew that in that temporary situation that my life had purpose and meaning. Like, I knew that once I graduated college, I was going to do better. I was going to be able to secure a job to help me, benefit the life that I desire. But I would say continue to live life and be okay and gracious to yourself that your child or you might not get it the first couple of times or the first 10 times. Like, it took me forever to understand investing. And there are so many things, like going into crypto, like there's so many things I just don't know, but I still show up and live life because I'm here and I have breath in my body to live again. And so I know that probably is like very out there and not maybe specific, but I would say just make mistakes and have fun. I mean, I know when I was growing up, my family, my dad for sure, like, he would take me when I lived in Asia, take me to different temples and different places throughout Japan. And that was our adventure. And so for me, creating memories every weekend is important because that's what my dad instilled in me. It wasn't, expensive. It was very, very inexpensive, but it showed me the importance of culture. It showed me the importance of people and their perspectives, which I think has helped my perspectives around money.
And I think especially what you said, basically living your best life and exemplifying, like, how would I word this? And weaving financial literacy into your life in a way that shows, I don't know the best way to word this, but maybe I can give an example. My parents, we would go on vacation quite a bit. And I knew that my mom used to be like, if you want this life, if you want to be able to to travel when you're older, you need to make sure that you're good with money. You are doing this, you were doing that. Like they basically everything about them was exemplifying financial literacy, and it was like very aspirational. So I knew that, okay, I need to get a good job, but once I get that job, I need to start investing my money. I need to do this, I need to do that. And it's simply because like they weaved it into every part of their life. And money was never something that they shied away from as well. They were very open about it in general, not just with us, but like with everybody. But what if someone's really shy about money overall? Is there a way to get them out of their shell and if they're not even comfortable with it, how do they talk about it more?
I think you're still your person and still who you are. You still have your personality. So if you're not open, that's fine. I would say finding, if you don't want to explore for everybody to know, finding a trusted confidant who is like solid with their finances. And you know that because not just not just because they say it and maybe they show it. I think it's important to see it. So for me, there was one person in particular when I was in my early 20s. I saw their portfolio, and they were very open in sharing it. And I was like, how much, like, you could do that? I did not know that I did not know someone could have that amount of money. And so seeing it made me believe that I can do it.
So true. That's a great point. Yeah, that's such a great point. I think my dad showed me his portfolio once, and I was like, okay. I have things to aspire to.
Exactly. Yeah. And for me, like, I used to be, I was not as open about money as I am now. But for me, it was getting very uncomfortable in certain situations that I didn't understand. So when I entered my first job, there were several men who were investing in properties throughout the city that I lived in. And I mean, they were doing duplex and multiplexes. And they would invite me to the house, like to their house, just to talk because we worked in the same unit department. And so I would go and sit and I would just be quiet, Reni. Like I was very quiet because I didn't know how to add to the conversation, but I was absorbing all the information that they were talking about. And so a year later, I was able to purchase my first property. And that because I was uncomfortable. I wouldn't say I was shy. I just didn't know what to say because I didn't know anything about what they were talking about. I didn't know anything about real estate other than my parents had bought their house. Like outside of that, I didn't know, like they're buying multiple properties. And I'm like, how?
You do that? Like what?
Yeah. But it took, going into these very uncomfortable spaces and just being a sponge and then asking the questions I didn't know the answers to, or finding someone that was that would answer the question. So I had I went to church, and my pastor at the time was a former VP of a bank. And so we talked about like lenders, and we talked about like how much my monthly mortgage payment would be. And so that kind of helped me gain the steps that I needed to secure that first property. But for me, it was truly getting uncomfortable and surrounding myself with people who didn't think like me.
Yeah. You said it all. Like basically surrounding yourself with the right people. They always say like, show me your 5 closest friends and I can tell you your future. So I think it's definitely important who you surround yourself with. And one thing, I know you said you were just absorbing everything. So my dad, I just remembered, he used to play Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I know he's like Robert Kiyosaki's kind of problematic, sometimes. But growing up as a child, like instead of listening to music, my dad would play like Rich Dad Poor Dad tapes all the time. He was learning for himself, but then his kids were in the car, and then we were also just learning as well. So I do think it made an impact. So there are lots of ways that we can absorb knowledge, especially nowadays, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I know we're almost out of time. I know I saw a lot of questions. I saw a lot of things on your page about the Great Wealth Transfer. So I wanted to know if you could tell us a little bit about what that is, just for the people.
Absolutely. So the Great Wealth Transfer is basically sharing. It is the term designated to the transfer of wealth between generations. So, for example, right now, the silent generation is in in Canada is stated to transfer about $150 billion by 2026. So that means grandparents, great-grandparents are going to be passing that wealth down to their children and then their grandchildren. In the US, it's stated to be about $68 trillion that are going to transfer hands by 2030 in the US. So that means that there is wealth that was acquired in, for our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and now that they, are preparing for their transition, whether it's, maybe they want to downsize or, passing away, now they're passing that down to their children as well as their grandchildren. And so I share that because it's happening. I think those are conversations that need to happen before the person gets to the, the final stages of their life. I was looking at RBC. They mentioned the importance of onboarding families. So these are, of course, financial advisors, but in the portfolio, they are onboarding different generations to like the wealth management of the family. So what is the legacy that we're leaving? I think we talk about generational wealth, but how do you sustain generational wealth if the kids don't know about what your plans are for when you pass away? And so I know it's a bit scary to talk about that, but I always like to think there are two things very guaranteed in this life, and that's death and taxes. And so like I know it's like a lot, but I think it's important that as we're thinking about the future and our kids' future, that we're also looking at, how are we going to pass down wealth to the next generation? And I think having those open conversations of like, I do have this. I want to give you this, or I want to pass this down to you. And this is my hope of what you would do with it. If it's an inheritance, if it's a trust, this is the goals for this, and this is why. I think if you look at families, specifically in the US, how they've been able to sustain their wealth, it's because of that onboarding process. People in that family know what the plan is. And there's some people that maybe aren't okay with the plan, and that's okay. But for the most part, that onboarding process is happening.
Yeah, and I used to work at the Bank of Montreal, and I was working in their wealth management department. And same thing, the focus was like I was in the marketing part, and our focus was attracting whole families, like parents, grandparents, great grandchildren, like the whole family. So yeah, it's happening very very soon. So we should all be trying to build wealth for ourselves, so we can help our children out long term. Another thing that Marina said that the library book trips are truly a blessing. The library has contests for kids to see how many books they would read over the summer period, and kids would earn gifts based on the number of books read. That's really good. I think my parents would do the same thing. Like if I would read a certain number of books, or if I would get a certain number of grades, a certain grade on my test, then I would get money as a result. So, I was like, I'm about my money. So I'm gonna read some books. So yeah, those are some great things. And my mom commented, Joy, I remember the Sunday trips to Chapters. So yeah, we would go to Chapters bookstore after church. So they were definitely trying to push me into the library all the time. And my parents were actually, because they moved here from England, they had to redo all their law exams. So they were studying for their law exam. So I would be in the library every single day, and my dad would be like, "Yeah, go read a book, like do something with your time." So I love to read. So
I love that too. That was me. Like my first, one of the first like volunteer jobs that I had was being a librarian assistant, and so I was always in the book. Like I am so grateful for my mom she just really empowered me to keep reading, and I think that constant yearn for knowledge, that constant yearn for just always having questions of why things are the way they are and being curious, I think has really, really played a huge factor in my personal finances. So utilize the library. Also utilize the Libby app. So
yes, I love it. I really love it. I always put
Yeah.
people on. I'm like, use the Libby app. It's completely free. You have access
Yes.
to your whole library catalog. Like I just discovered it this year, and I'm like, wow, I wish I had known about this earlier because I've been buying books for no reason.
Right, absolutely. So I empower your children to keep reading. So literacy, I took a behavioral financial class last year, and the instructor was saying how literacy uh, correlates to financial literacy. So reading and comprehension is a direct impact on financial literacy. And we
Wow.
see that, right? We see people not understanding terms and conditions. I know people,
That's true.
buying properties and they don't understand their closing documents. Or, I mean, taxes, just not understanding, is my employer taking the right taxes, withholding the right taxes? Can I actually read my paycheck or my pay stub? Like, the reading is important. And so I cannot tell you enough, like going to your library, it is a wealth of information just sitting on a shelf waiting for you to explore.
Literally. And when you talk about those, so we want our children to read more. So what are some books that you would recommend? Do you have, of course, yours? So maybe we'll plug your book and say to read your book. And where can we find that book again?
Yes. Um, yes. So I actually just recently launched a Kickstarter to fund the next two books of the Wealth Playground series. So I have my first book behind me, Boy, a Budget and a Dream, that teaches children about budgeting and about the importance of just dreaming big, but also having a plan for that dream. But the next two books are about value. And so we talked about value, the importance of that generational perspective. So it has a grandmother kind of teaching financial literacy and empowerment to a granddaughter. And then I also have a workbook that has over 50 activities for parents to share. So really easy activities, but also I've heard some adults say that, oh, wow, like I didn't know some of this information. So it's talking about the importance of investing in art, investing in the stock market, as well as budgeting, saving, and then a few other financial literacy tools within the book.
And I know we mentioned that we're going to do a giveaway. I want the giveaway to be for people who actually attended this. So
Okay.
how are we going to do this? If we're going to give away one of Jasmine's books or two?
We're two. Yep.
Two of Jasmine's books. So if you just go and comment on my most recent post and tell me one thing that you learned from today's session, we will give away to one person or two people who joined this live. Okay.
I love it.
Because I like when they're actually the people who engage who get the reward.
Yeah. Absolutely. And everyone had so many awesome questions. Like I am so excited. This is amazing.
I know. Thank you all for joining. One last question that I did want to ask just before we wrap up is what other avenues outside of like investing and saving can we use to build wealth for our children for our children?
Absolutely. So there are real estate, of course, so properties, getting them involved with the process of purchasing a property. Royalties are a good way. So a lot of my author friends do co-authorships with their kids, and their kids are getting royalties from selling children's books.
That's so smart. That's so smart.
There's a ton of kid authors out there, and I mean, and people are going to buy from kids, and they love it. And this is the opportunity for them to share, their gifts and their love for writing and their love for reading. And so that's a big way that I'm seeing, kids really, really being able to take advantage of, multiple income streams. I would say youth entrepreneurship camps are really good. Just to help them understand, like reinforce financial literacy, but also see another side. So maybe if they don't want to go to college, they can enter an entrepreneurship camp that will help them gain the tools that they need. I'm trying to think of some other ways. There's so many. If you are in the farming industry, so the farming is agriculture is another way to build wealth. But again, that's dependent on if that's in your industry. But yes, there's like quite a few ways to help build wealth with your kids.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. This was so insightful. I learned a lot, and I know my future kids will be blessed because they will be raised financially literate.
Yes.
Thank you, Jasmine. Do you want to plug anything before we end this live?
Yes, I wanted to share a few more books if that's okay.
Yes, definitely.
I have the titles now. So Growing Money, a complete investing guide for kids. That is like solid investing. If you're trying to understand the stock market, it's a great resource. That's by Gail Carlitz and Debbie Honig. How to Turn $100 into 1 million, Earn, Save, and Invest by James McKenna. And then of course, you can grab my books as well. And then M is for Money. It's a ABC book about money. M is for Money. So there's so much. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I will leave, if you check the description box, all of Jasmine's info is there about where you can find her books, her Instagram, everything is there. So make sure you follow her on Instagram, comment on my latest post, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, Jasmine, for coming on my channel. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I had so much fun.
Yes. And everyone, if you want future live sessions, just feel free to tell me. I'm going to have my mom coming on and my dad coming on to tell you all how they raised me to be financially literate. So if you want to see that, just make sure that you let me know. And yeah, thank you so much, Jasmine.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so excited for these financially literate kids that are going to be taking over.
They're so blessed because a lot of people did not have that opportunity. So
absolutely.
I'm excited. I'm really excited.
Yes,
thank
me
you.
Too.
Bye, everyone.